They laughed at her every single day, not because they knew her, but because they thought they understood her just by looking. Imagine walking into a room where, before you even speak, you've already been judged, labeled, reduced to a joke. That was Lina's reality. But here's the truth no one saw coming. The same girl they mocked would be the one they could never forget. Stay with me, because this isn't just a story about pain. It's about what happens when someone decides they've had enough, and rises anyway. Don't forget to subscribe. Powerful stories like this are posted every week. She walked into school every day already bracing herself. Her name was Lina, and even before the first bell rang, her chest felt tight, like she was preparing for a storm she couldn't avoid. The hallway was always loud, lockers slamming, shoes squeaking against the floor, voices echoing. But somehow, in the middle of all that noise, she felt completely alone. As she stepped inside, she could feel the weight of eyes on her. Not curious eyes, judging ones. Some students whispered behind their hands. Others didn't even bother hiding their smirks. Lina kept her gaze down, focusing on the worn-out tiles beneath her feet, counting each step as if it could somehow make her invisible. She adjusted her backpack on her shoulder, took a quiet breath, and kept walking, pretending she didn't notice, even though she noticed everything. It started with small jokes, almost harmless at first, at least that's what people said. A quiet chuckle when she passed by, a whispered comment that barely reached her ears but still cut deep. "Why does she look like that?" someone muttered one morning, just loud enough for others to hear. A few students laughed, not even thinking twice. Lina felt it, even if she pretended not to. Over time, those small moments grew sharper, louder, more deliberate. The whispers turned into open jokes, and the jokes into nicknames that followed her down the halls like shadows she couldn't escape. Written on desks, murmured during class, echoed in the cafeteria, they clung to her, heavy and suffocating. Each word landed like a tiny to her chest, invisible to others, but impossible for her to ignore. And the worst part? No one stopped it. Some joined in, some stayed silent, and Lina, she just kept walking, carrying every word with her. Lina tried to laugh it off at first. You know that kind of laugh, the one that sounds light on the outside but feels heavy inside? She forced it, just to survive the moment, just to make it seem like their words didn't matter. Sometimes she even played along, making a small joke about herself before anyone else could. It was her way of staying in control, or at least pretending to. But when the day ended and the noise of school faded away, everything she held in came rushing back. In her room, with the door closed and the world finally quiet, she would stand in front of the mirror. The same mirror she avoided every morning now felt impossible to ignore at night. She studied her reflection carefully, her eyes searching for what they kept pointing out. Her fingers would trace her face slowly, as if trying to understand what was wrong. Her chest tightened. A mix of confusion and sadness filled her. Are they right? The thought slipped in, uninvited, and once it was there, it didn't leave easily. The laughter from earlier replayed in her mind, louder now, echoing against the silence of her room. She didn't cry loudly. It was quieter than that, just a few tears slipping down, quickly wiped away, like even her pain needed to stay hidden. Lina looked at herself one last time before turning off the light, but the image didn't disappear. It followed her, into her thoughts, into her sleep, into the next day. Before we start, have you ever felt judged for how you look? Stay with me, this story is for you. The worst part wasn't the words. It was how invisible she felt. Day after day, Lina sat in the same classroom, surrounded by people, yet it felt like she didn't exist, unless it was for someone to laugh at her. When teachers asked questions, hands shot up around her, voices eager to be heard. But when Lina raised her hand, it was as if the air swallowed her. Sometimes the teacher didn't notice. Sometimes they did, and still chose someone else. At lunch, the cafeteria buzzed with conversations, trays clattering, chairs scraping the floor. Groups formed naturally, like pieces of a puzzle fitting together. But Lina? She carried her tray slowly, scanning for a place to sit, already knowing there wasn't one waiting for her. She would end up at the corner of a table or alone by the window, pretending to focus on her food while laughter echoed nearby, never with her, always around her. That feeling, it stayed with her. Not just in school, but inside her. Like she didn't matter. Like she was just background noise in someone else's story. And deep down, that hurt more than any insult ever could. Because when no one sees you, you start to wonder if there's anything worth seeing at all. One day, after a cruel joke in class made everyone laugh, something inside her finally cracked. It happened so fast, and yet for Lina, it felt like time slowed down. A boy at the back of the room said something loud enough for everyone to hear, something sharp and careless. The class erupted in laughter, the kind that fills the entire space and leaves no room to breathe. Lina felt her face burn. Her hands tightened around her pencil until her fingers hurt. She tried to smile, tried to pretend like before, but this time, the smile didn't come. Her throat closed, her chest felt heavy, and for a moment, she thought she might cry right there, in front of everyone. So she didn't. Instead, she went quiet. Not just in that moment, but after that. She stopped raising her hand, even when she knew the answers. She stopped looking up when teachers spoke. Her eyes stayed on her desk, on the same corner of the notebook, as if it were the only safe place left. Even her posture changed, shoulders slightly hunched, like she was trying to take up less space. It felt safer that way. If she didn't stand out, maybe they'd stop noticing her. If she stayed invisible, maybe the laughter would fade. But deep inside, something else was happening, a mix of tristeza and quiet anger building slowly. She wasn't just disappearing from others. She was starting to disappear from herself. But life doesn't stay still, even when you try to disappear. One afternoon, during class, while everyone else was talking and moving like usual, a teacher noticed something different about Lina. It wasn't her appearance. He had seen many students come and go. It was her silence. The kind that doesn't just mean quiet, but something is wrong. He paused for a moment, watching her sit there, eyes fixed on her notebook, barely moving. Then, after class, he gently called her name. "Lina, could you stay for a minute?" His voice wasn't harsh or demanding. It was calm, almost careful. Lina's heart started racing. Did I do something wrong? She thought, her stomach tightening. Slowly, she stood up, avoiding eye contact as she approached his desk. But instead of questioning her, he simply gave her a small task. "We're starting a school project," he said, sliding a few papers toward her. "I need someone organized to help put things together. I think you can do it." Lina blinked, confused. No one had said something like that to her in a long time. "I think you can do it." The words felt unfamiliar, almost unreal. She hesitated. Part of her wanted to say no, to avoid any chance of being exposed, laughed at, or failing in front of others. Fear whispered loudly in her mind. But there was something else too, something quieter, but stronger than before. A small spark of esperanza. She nodded, barely above a whisper. "Okay." It wasn't a big moment to anyone else. Just a simple task. But for Lina, it felt like standing at the edge of something new. Something she wasn't sure she was ready for, but couldn't ignore anymore. Lina didn't want it at first. The moment she left the classroom with those papers in her hands, doubt began to grow louder than that small spark of hope. As she walked down the hallway, the same voices echoed around her, the same laughter, the same looks. Nothing had changed out there, so why would anything change for her? She held the papers tightly against her chest, as if someone might take them away or question why she had them. What if I mess this up? The thought repeated in her mind. What if they laugh again? Her hüttewetten slowed, her shoulders tense, as if she were carrying something much heavier than just a simple task. That afternoon, sitting at her desk at home, she spread the project materials out in front of her. The room was quiet, the soft light from the window falling across the pages. For a long moment, she just stared at them. Fear was still there, whispering, reminding her of every time she had been humiliated. But then, she remembered the teacher's voice. Calm. Certain. I think you can do it. No one had said that to her in a long time. Her fingers moved slowly at first, organizing the papers, reading through the instructions, trying to understand what needed to be done. It wasn't perfect. She made mistakes, erased things, started again. But she didn't stop. Because deep down, something had shifted. She wasn't doing this to prove them wrong, not yet. She was doing it to prove something to herself. And for the first time in a long while, she chose to try. If this part touched you, take a second to like the video. It helps more people hear stories like this. Working on the project, she discovered something she hadn't felt in a long time: focus. Real focus. The kind that makes the outside world fade, even if just for a while. At first, it was slow. She reread instructions, rearranged notes, made small plans on a piece of paper filled with eraser marks. But little by little, things started to make sense. Her desk became her space. Papers neatly stacked, a pen always in the same place, ideas forming in her mind before she even wrote them down. There was something calming about organizing chaos, something empowering about turning confusion into clarity. The next day at school, when the group gathered to talk about the project, Lina stayed quiet at first, listening carefully. Voices overlapped, people talked over each other, no one really leading. The same familiar fear crept in. Don't speak. Don't draw attention. But then she noticed something. They were stuck. Her heart started beating faster. Her hands felt cold. For a second, she almost stayed silent again. Almost. Then softly she spoke. Maybe we could divide it into parts first. The group paused. Not because they were impressed, but because they weren't expecting her to say anything at all. Someone shrugged. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. It wasn't applause. It wasn't praise. But it was something new. They listened. As the discussion continued, Lina added small ideas, carefully, one at a time. And each time, no one laughed. No one interrupted. They simply accepted it. That moment may have seemed small from the outside. But inside Lina, something shifted again. For the first time, people weren't seeing her for how she looked. They were seeing what she could do. Not everyone was kind. The whispers didn't disappear overnight, and the looks, they were still there. Some students rolled their eyes when she spoke, others exchanged quiet smirks when they thought she wouldn't notice. The past wasn't gone. It lingered in small, uncomfortable moments. But something had changed in Lina. This time, when she heard a comment under someone's breath, her chest still tightened, but she didn't shrink the way she used to. Instead of lowering her head, she kept her focus on the work in front of her. Her hand stayed steady, her voice, when she chose to use it, didn't tremble as much. During the project meetings, a few classmates started to rely on her without even realizing it. Lina, do you have the schedule? Someone asked casually one day. Another added, she's good with organizing this stuff. The words weren't loud, but they carried weight. It wasn't friendship. Not yet. And maybe not even kindness. But it was respect. And for someone who had spent so long feeling invisible, the respect felt like a small light breaking through a long dark tunnel. It gave her something real to hold on to, something stronger than the opinions that once defined her. Lina still felt fear. Still remembered every laugh, every insult. But now, alongside that fear, there was something new growing quietly inside her. Confidence. Slowly, she started to stand straighter. It wasn't something dramatic, no sudden transformation, no moment where everything changed at once. It was subtle, quiet, but real. When Lina walked through the halls now, her steps were a little more firm, her shoulders not as tense as before. She still felt the eyes, still heard the whispers sometimes, but they didn't hit her the same way. In class, she began to look up more. Not all the time, but enough. When she spoke during the project discussions, her voice carried a bit more strength, a bit more certeza. She no longer rushed her words or apologized before even finishing a sentence. Inside, there was still fear. That didn't disappear. There were moments when doubt came back, when old memories of laughter tried to pull her down again. But now, she had something to fight back with: proof. Proof that she was capable. Proof that she mattered. And the most important part? The world around her hadn't really changed. The same people, the same place, the same environment. But Lina, she had changed. And sometimes, that's where everything truly begins. The final test came during a big school presentation. The classroom felt different that day, tenser, heavier. Desks were arranged in rows, a projector humming softly at the front, casting a pale light across the wall. Students whispered to each other, some nervous, some excited. But for Lina, it felt like everything was closing in. Her group stood together near the front, holding their notes, glancing at each other. And then she noticed something that made her stomach drop. Things were not ready. A key part of the presentation was missing. Slides were out of order. Someone had forgotten important information. Panic started to spread through the group like a silent wave. One student whispered, "This is going to be a disaster." Lina felt her heart start racing. Her hands grew cold, her breath shallow. For a split second, all the old feelings came rushing back. Medo doubt, that urge to step back, to disappear, to let someone else take the fall. "This is your moment to fail," a voice inside her whispered. And then, almost instinctively, all eyes turned to her. Not with laughter this time, but with expectation. That alone was overwhelming. She could feel the weight of it pressing down on her. The same people who once ignored her now needed her. The same room that once made her feel small now waited for her to act. For a brief moment, Lina froze. The old version of her stood right there, ready to take over, ready to stay silent. But something inside her pushed back. Have you ever experienced something similar? Share your story in the comments. In that moment, Lina took a slow, steady breath. It wasn't dramatic. No one noticed it but her, but it grounded her. The noise around her faded just enough for her to think. Her eyes moved quickly across the scattered notes, the disorganized slides, the worried faces of her teammates. "Okay, we can fix this," she said, her voice calm, calmer than she felt inside. There was a slight pause. No one laughed. No one interrupted. They listened. Lina stepped forward, her hands moving with purpose now. "You, switch the slides back to the original order. I'll handle the missing part. We don't need everything, just the key points." Her mind worked fast, connecting pieces, simplifying what seemed impossible just seconds ago. Her heart was still racing, but something stronger had taken over: Valencia. The presentation started. At first, her voice was soft, almost cautious. But as she continued, it grew steadier, clearer. She didn't rush. She didn't hide. She spoke like someone who knew what she was doing, because now she did. The room changed. The same classmates who once whispered about her were now watching in silence. Real attention.
No smirks. No jokes.
Just focus. Even when a small mistake happened, Lina didn't panic. She adjusted, corrected it, and kept going.
No hesitation.
No fear taking control this time. And in that moment, something powerful happened. Lina wasn't the girl trying to disappear anymore. She was leading. When it ended, there was a brief moment where everything stood still. The last slide faded from the screen, the projector's soft hum filling the silence. Lina's hands were still, her heart still beating fast in her chest. For a second, she didn't move. She didn't look up. She was waiting. Waiting for the laughter. The whispers. The same reaction she had known for so long. But it didn't come. Instead, there was silence. Real silence. The kind that feels heavy, but not in a bad way, more like something is about to happen. Then slowly, someone started clapping. One pair of hands. Then another. And another. The sound grew, filling the room, echoing off the walls. Applause. Real applause. Not forced, not mocking, genuine. Lina lifted her eyes, almost unsure if it was real. Her gaze met faces that once looked at her with judgment. Now, they looked different. Some were surprised. Some impressed. Some, even ashamed. Her chest tightened again, but this time it wasn't from fear. It was something else. Relief.
Pride.
A quiet sense of justice. Not because she had proven them wrong, but because she had finally proven something right to herself. And in that moment, without saying a word, everything had changed. Later, when the classroom had emptied and the noise of the day had softened into distant echoes, Lina was gathering her things slowly, still trying to process everything that had just happened. Her hands moved calmly, but inside, her emotions were still catching up, relief, disbelief, a quiet warmth she wasn't used to feeling. Then she noticed someone approaching. It was one of the students who used to laugh. Not loudly, not always in front of everyone, but enough. Enough for Lina to remember. He walked slower than usual, his eyes not quite meeting hers at first. His posture was different too, less confident, almost uncertain. "Hey, Lina," he said, his voice lower than she had ever heard it. She looked up, her expression neutral. Not cold, not warm, just present. He hesitated, rubbing the back of his neck, searching for words that didn't come easily. I just wanted to say,
I'm sorry."
The sentence came out uneven, like he wasn't used to saying it. For before. For everything. There was a pause. Lina didn't answer right away. She studied his face, not with anger, but with clarity. She remembered the laughter, the whispers, the way it all felt. That part of her hadn't disappeared. But something else had grown stronger. She gave a small nod. Not a smile. Not forgiveness wrapped in words. Just a quiet acknowledgement. Because this wasn't about erasing the past. It was about not letting it control her anymore. And in that moment, Lina showed something even greater than strength. She showed humility. Years passed, and life moved forward. But Lina carried that moment with her, not as a scar, but as a turning point. She didn't become someone completely different. She became more of who she truly was. The quiet girl who once hid in the background grew into a woman people listened to, not because she demanded attention, but because her presence had weight, her words had meaning. She built a life where her abilities spoke louder than appearances. In her work, in her relationships, she became known for something deeper, her resilience, her intelligence, her calm strength. And sometimes, when she saw someone sitting alone, avoiding eye contact, carrying that same invisible weight she once carried, she didn't ignore it. She saw them. Because she knew exactly what it felt like to be unseen. And in those small moments, offering a kind word, a simple gesture, a chance, she became the person she once needed. Lina didn't forget where she came from. But she no longer lived there. She moved forward, with humility, with quiet confidence, and with a heart that understood more than most. And if there's one thing her story leaves behind, it's this. Before you judge someone's face, make sure you're not blind to their strength. Because the person you overlook today might be the one who rises tomorrow. And in the end, nothing about Lina's face had changed, but everything about how the world saw her did. Not because people suddenly became kind, but because she stopped letting their voices define her. The truth is, the world will always try to label you before it understands you. But your worth? That's something no one else gets to decide. Lina didn't win by becoming someone else. She won the moment she chose to believe she was already enough. So before you laugh, judge, or look away from someone, remember this. You might be standing in front of a story that's stronger than you could ever imagine. If this message meant something to you, share this video with someone who needs to hear it today.